aristocracy. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest State Representative Mark Walker. We say State Representative to be. He was just elected out of Arlington Heights in the November 4 election. He will be going down to be inaugurated. I guess that'll be on January 14th, 2009.
Exactly right.
We're taping the show on December 28th. Most of you folks will be watching it if you're in the Chicago metro suburbs the first week, the week of January 5th, first week of the full week of the year, the new year, and many will be seeing it in the second week, and that would be the time when things really start happening. That is, Todd Blagojevich may be impeached. Articles of impeachment would seem likely or likely to issue from the House, and then of course then it goes to the state Senate for a trial. All that could go rather quickly or not so much. We'll be talking a lot about that during the show, where things go in terms of impeachment or resignation, whether there'll be a special election or should be a special election to replace Senator Barack Obama with the next senator from the state of Illinois, and get into some of the nitty-gritty issues that Representative Walker, we'll call you Representative, and I guess officially it doesn't happen until January 14th.
That's right? Okay by me.
You're all right with that. Representative Walker will be dealing with whether it's the capital plan, whether it's the big deficit that the state has. So there's a lot happening in the state of Illinois, and it has been put on the map in part because the president-elect is from Illinois, and then put on the map in part because of the assertion that the Senate seat in Illinois was up for sale. You know, a lot of people thought there weren't any good Christmas buys, but come to Illinois and you could get an Illinois Senate seat for what, as low as $149? Well, we'll see. You know, one thing to know is that our guest, Mark Walker, was elected out of the 66th District, and we were talking before the show. He is a Democrat, and maybe is the first Democrat to hold that since the Civil War.
The first one to win the district.
To win the
there
district.
Have been Democratic representatives.
Oh, when we had
three,
right?
Yeah.
But they didn't really ever. They were not the ones to win. They get the highest votes.
Right.
One of those things where
as
you had
I know.
to have 3 representatives, and one of them had to be the other party. So
right.
In the olden days, so it's been a pretty pretty Republican district for a pretty long time. He beat Christine Prochnow in a close, well, some would say close race, about 2,000 votes, 52-48. Rosemary Mulligan, in sort of the sister seat there, has been a long-standing Republican, and she did hold that seat, winning by about 3,600 votes. Dan Katowski, state senator, covering both the 65th and the 66th, barely won that seat 2 years ago. This time around, won by 16,000 votes. So that gives you the setting. But most of the show, for folks, if you're watching this and you're worried it's going to be about the 66, it's really about the major issues that face the state of Illinois, of which Mr. Walker, Representative Walker, is simply one of those representatives dealing with it. And let me kick that off right now, and we'll come back and tell people a little bit more about you. But the simple question is, you're going to be down there. You may be voting on articles of impeachment.
Right.
Is it your view that Rod Blagojevich should be impeached, that articles of impeachment should issue from the House of Representatives? He is your governor. He is a Democrat. You're a Democrat. So does that add a complication to that, or would you like to see this guy out of here as soon as possible?
Well, you're answering my question for me. I would like to see the guy out of here as soon as possible. I would prefer that he resign.
Why? Why not just impeach him? I mean,
because resignation's quicker.
Okay. Yeah.
I believe that he should have been gone a year ago.
You mean he should have been impeached a year ago?
I believe he should have been out of that office. And the reason I say that, I try and view, I'm a business consultant by background, and I view the state of Illinois as a corporation that is not functioning properly. And after watching it for a couple of years, I decided that one of the key problems of the state is a bad CEO. As the chief executive, if this were a corporation, he'd have been gone.
What is bad about Rod Blagojevich?
He is erratic in his decision making. He will, for instance, allow a budgeting process to go on for months and then change the rules the last day. He will do things that cause people not to trust his word within the management process of the state. And I think as a CEO, he's bad and shouldn't be there.
Is he incompetent, or is he corrupt, or both?
I don't know that he's corrupt, but we'll see what Fitzgerald and the whole legal process comes up about that. I know that he's incompetent.
What do you think the grounds are for impeachment?
Well, the difficulty is the state constitution doesn't have clear grounds for impeachment.
So what do you think the grounds should be for impeachment?
I think both disregarding the expected processes of government could be grounds for impeachment, as well as corruption.
So abuse of power in terms of what the Constitution sets out as to what the governor's power is, say, relative to the state legislature.
Right. Now, there has to be a lot of judgment there. How serious is that, and what is the impact? I think he, in following this as a citizen more than as a future rep, I think his argument that's coming up maybe this coming Monday, that I'm going to outline for you, or my lawyer, is all the things I've done for the people, as an argument against the claim that he's been abusing the power and abusing the processes, is an interesting argument. What I think he might be saying, and it's a reasonable argument, is that it doesn't matter that I didn't follow the rules of government, I still help the people.
If that's a reasonable argument in your mind.
I think it is an argument. I don't believe that is a good argument.
It's not a defense.
Right.
He should still be impeached even if he did some things that were good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I call him, to make it even more interesting, in this arena, I've been calling him for years now, Blagojevich. The things he does in changing the intent of the legislature, in terms of sweeping funds, paying for things he wants to and not for things he doesn't want to, regardless of what the legislature says, are similar to George Bush's signing statements on bills where he will say, I will pass this bill because I don't feel like I should veto it, but I'm not going to follow it. I find that...
Have other presidents done that other than Bush?
Apparently, some presidents have done it occasionally.
Bill Clinton did that occasionally?
Yes, but we're talking 12, 15 times versus 160 times. We're talking orders of magnitude in that sense. And this isn't about Bush. But the question is, how serious is that? I think that Governor Blagojevich also has abused the power that he's been given as governor and circumvented the natural process of the separation of powers between the legislature and the governor. And that's serious enough to be looked at as a potentially impeachable offense.
Why, you know, if you go back to 2006, I think it was the case that Mayor Daley and Speaker Mike Madigan co-chaired Rod Blagojevich's re-election campaign. And was my memory of that right?
I have heard that, yeah. I don't know.
So the leaders of the Democratic Party, after seeing 4 years of Rod Blagojevich, decided they wanted to chair his campaign. Does the Democratic Party, in the name of Speaker Mike Madigan, the Illinois Democratic Party, and in the name of Mayor Richard M. Daley, do they share a lot of responsibility for the mess that is, some would say, certainly, that Rod Blagojevich leaves the state in right now?
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, don't you think they would have known if he were abusing powers? He didn't just start doing so in January 2007, right?
I can't speak for them.
All right, but you don't.
My guess is that they thought they could manage him in some fashion.
Or did they just play politics as usual? He's better than a Republican. He's a Democrat, they're a Democrat. Democrats support Democrats. As far as Claypool said in different contexts on this show. What's news there? Democrats support Democrats, right? I think the context was his support of Todd Stroger, right? Democrats support Democrats. Dick Durbin's support of Todd Stroger. Democrats support Democrats. Do you see my point? Is there a problem here?
I see your point, and there might be a problem here.
I mean, did you support Todd Stroger when he ran for Cook County Board President?
I did not.
In the primary, you did not. Did you support Forrest Claypool?
Actually, I did support Forrest Claypool, but only because Quigley dropped out.
Okay.
Quigley is my guy.
That you would have preferred Quigley.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get Quigley, so you preferred Claypool.
Right.
You got Todd Stroger. Did you prefer Todd Stroger to Tony Pareca in the general election?
That's an interesting, I don't even recall. Probably did.
Probably did. So you would be guilty of
did.
the same thing. Democrats support Democrats, right?
I tend to support Democrats.
Yeah, but I mean, is that a problem? And it's not just you.
Yeah.
Republicans tend to support Republicans, to be fair. So partisans tend to support partisans. Yeah. That's why they're partisan. But, I mean, an issue that came up in the campaign was how independent were you? How independent was your opponent? So will that be perhaps an issue coming up in the future. Are you independent, and is that something that the 66th District wants in their representative?
Well, the 66th District clearly wants independence in their representative.
And are you an independent?
And I am independent. I am certainly independent of Daley, Stroger, and Blagojevich.
But in a general election, when the chips were down,
you're asking me, did I
Todd.
vote for them?
Yeah, you supported them.
I certainly didn't support them in any other way.
You voted for them, though.
I voted for those. I believe I voted for Stroger.
Think ahead.
It was not my choice.
So hypothetically, if Todd Stroger runs for re-election, as it seems likely in 2010 for Cook County Board President, would you be supporting him then?
I would work against him in the primary.
In the primary. And if he wins the primary, and say, hypothetically, it's possible people are saying that Paul Vallis, people remember Paul Vallis used to be chairman, the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools. If Vallis were the candidate, the Republican candidate for Cook County Board President, and Todd Stroger were the Democratic candidate, Cook County Board President 2010, who do you, Mark Walker, Democratic State Rep, support in that race?
I don't support anyone in that race right now because they're not running, but hypothetically, I could support Paul Vallis.
As a Republican?
If he's running as a Republican, I would support the man.
You could support him. You're not deciding now whether you do it, but you could support Paul Vallis over Todd Stroger.
Yes.
Okay.
Todd Stroger is, see, I view this as questions of competence and trust. And I find that Todd Stroger, for the most part, is not a competent administrator, not a competent manager, not a good leader.
Is he corrupt?
I have no idea.
Well, I mean, how many, got 25,000 employees there now. He came in with 25,000, yet he talks about a reduction in force. I mean, I don't know if you call that corrupt. Is that misleading?
I don't know that.
But you've heard about the friends. You've heard about the friends and family. Well, corrupt is too strong a word. You know, is he bad for the county because this friends and family program? His cousin Donna Dunnings is with the CFO and gets enormous increases in salary, as do many of his other friends. Those are the allegations.
Right.
But you've heard him enough coming from Democrats like Forrest Claypool and your Mike Quigley, who you certainly admire, it sounds like. Quigley and Claypool would tell you this guy does a lot of that, a lot of patronage, a lot of friends and family.
And it makes, and I believe that he does that, and I believe that it makes him an ineffective leader. I believe that he's lost the faith and credit among the community.
Certainly in your neck of the woods.
In my neck of the woods, clearly.
In the suburbs in Cook County.
Right.
He's got to be one of the least popular politicians around, right?
I
mean, is that right? One of the least popular? Yeah.
I talked over their doorstep with 11,000 people in order to run this race. I knocked on 40,000 doors. When I asked people, what is the number one thing you want me to do in Springfield, you know what they said? They said, get rid of Todd Stroger. And I said, he's not in Springfield.
I said, that's what they want.
Yeah. They said then, for the most part, get rid of Rod Blagojevich.
Okay.
That blew away every other issue top of mind: education, financials, economic development, child care. It was Stroger and Blagojevich.
Okay. So if he is impeached in your mind, if Rod Blagojevich is impeached, what would be the main charge against him? This abuse of power?
I really don't know.
You know what I mean? Could they use the sale of the Senate seat, the allegation that he attempted to sell the Senate seat for personal gain?
They could do that, but the question is whether or not they'll have sufficient basis for it, given that Fitzgerald doesn't want them mucking up his investigation.
Right, so they kind of just have to use hearsay, out-of-court statements offered to prove the truth or something like that, right?
So
he's not going to, he doesn't want them getting in and calling his witnesses, right?
Right, that's my understanding.
So he could use that. They could use the more mundane things of contracts that were led with the allegations that he received contributions.
Right. Is there a pattern of abuse here?
Yeah. Okay.
All of these are possible. I'd like to see what the committee comes up with. And I don't want to take a formal position given that I might have to vote on it.
Yeah, and you might see, well, we're taping this as we say on the 28th. You may learn more about it just as people, by the time they see this the week of the 5th, we may have all learned more about it.
Right. Our holiday present in this state would be for him to resign, to step aside as Quinn asked him to.
All right. And so if he does, should there be a special election, or should Pat Quinn, right now, as of December 28th, what should be the procedure to replace Barack Obama? Should there be a special election, or what?
I believe Pat Quinn's fully capable of picking the right candidate. I would.
But if it takes 2 months, should we wait? I mean, it might take 4 months. We really just don't know how long this will take.
Yeah, it's a matter of speed.
So couldn't you have a special election that could piggyback on the municipal elections throughout the state in February and April? Primary in February, general election
It's
in April.
possible, but my position on that has been that simply because of Rod Blagojevich, I don't want to change the processes and the rights of the offices.
No, but is Pat Quinn really, is he tainted by this? He's the lieutenant governor. He ran twice with Rod Blagojevich.
Actually, as I know you know, the opposite is true.
Well, he did run twice with Rod Blagojevich.
His reputation
Nominally, he supported Rod Blagojevich for governor in 2002 and in 2006.
Nominally.
That would be the case.
His reputation is as an outsider, as a reformer. I'm a fan of his, and I'll tell you why, because I'm a veteran and I've been a veterans advocate for years, and Pat Quinn is the veterans hero in this state.
Pat's had like 5 different positions in the last few weeks, but this current position, as I understand it, is that there should be a special election. So Quinn himself, for whatever reason, apparently thinks it should be a special election, not an appointment.
Could well be.
But you
I
still...
would prefer that if he becomes governor, he takes the rights and responsibilities of governor and names a senator and get it over quickly.
He being Pat Quinn.
Yes.
So have him do that. Okay. Any favorites that you'd like to see get named for senator?
That's an interesting question. I did like the list that apparently Obama passed on.
Valerie Jarrett, would she be a good appointment?
I don't know her.
Yeah. Okay. Tammy Duckworth.
Yes.
She'd be somebody.
I like her a lot. She's a substantial person.
Dan Hines.
Brilliant person.
State comptroller.
Yes.
Okay.
Dan's been holding up his hand about our financial crisis for months.
Lisa Madigan, the Attorney General, would she be a good appointment?
You know, I think she would be, but I
think she was on the supplemental list. I don't think she was on the initial list.
Anybody that is right now in charge of uprooting and throwing corrupt officials in jail, I'd like them to stay at their job.
Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., would he be a good appointment?
I think so.
Despite what's been said, it's not been clear, but you know, the transcripts that came out about Jesse having an emissary approach them in terms of raising money for them, and it's come out that some Indian Americans were in fact raising a substantial amount of money for Rod Blagojevich, and they apparently favored the appointment of Jesse Jr.
But were they doing it at his request?
Well, his brother was involved, Jesse Jr.'s brother. Do you think Jesse Jr.'s brother would be involved in something without Jesse knowing?
You know, when I read it, I assumed his brother was acting as a rogue. Yeah.
As a rogue?
That was my personal reaction to it.
Well, I don't know. That's problematic, though. If you can't control your brothers, can you control enough to be the U.S. Senator of the state of Illinois?
I think he has the character and the background, and he's shown independence even from his family in ways that I admire. Okay. I think he'd be a good senator.
All right. Let's get on with. Okay. So we before we get to the substantive issues here, do we have? I just want to nail this down. Do we have a general issue with the Illinois Democratic Party that it's kind of like people have offices and they kind of pass them on from generation to generation, Daley to Daley, Madigan to Madigan, Lipinski to Lipinski, Hines to Hines? Well, Tommy Hines was the state assessor and Cook County Board President.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, Cook County Assessor, excuse me, and then I guess he was State Senate President. So Tommy Hines passed it on in some form, an office to Dan Hines. I mean, nobody doubts that Dan Hines would not be comptroller, not have been comptroller 8 years ago if his name were Smith.
And how about George Bush?
Same thing, right. It's more prevalent in Illinois. I mean, the Bushes have the problem. No, I think you're exactly right.
Gore.
Well, but it doesn't seem to permeate Tennessee and Texas, as far as I know. I mean, this is an impressive list. Daley to Daley, 53 years. Last 53 years, 40 of those years has had a Daley in the mayor's seat in Chicago. Madigan, Speaker Mike Madigan, there for about 30 years. His daughter became Attorney General with the tremendous experience of 4 years in the state Senate and 4 years of private practice. We have to admit that was a bit thin, right? She could be a great Attorney General or not. But
she is, in fact, a great Attorney
That
General.
may be. I'm saying people may argue that. I'm not going to argue that here one way or the other. But my point is Daley to Daley, Madigan to Madigan, Lipinski to Lipinski. Bill Lipinski passes on essentially the congressional seat to Dan Lipinski. We know what happened there. We don't have to go on. Hines to Hines we just covered. John Stroger to Todd Stroger. Richard Mell to Rod Blagojevich. Okay, I've thrown in recently Andy McKenna Senior. Andy
well,
McKenna
that's a
Senior
stretch,
to Andy
but-
McKenna. You wouldn't McKenna to McKenna is a stretch, you think?
Yeah. Mel to Blagojevich.
Mel to Blagojevich. But you see my point. This is the Democratic Party. Look, there are people I know, Democrats, who refer to this as the aristocracy. They themselves don't like it because they can't get in on this game unless their name happens to be one of the, or Jackson to Jackson. Is this a problem for the Illinois Democratic Party? Okay, that's my point. And then we'll get on to the substance.
I think it's a problem for America.
Yeah, like Carolyn Kennedy, for we're saying now, okay? This broad, if we want to use that language, okay, I'll get heat for that. This broad steps up out of nowhere and says she'd like to be the U.S. Senator from the state of New York. And she'd like David Patterson to appoint her. And we know what she's done? She's been a mom. There's nothing wrong with being a mom, but like for 51 years, and she's a lawyer, and like she got a law degree. And she wrote a book. I mean, she was at the bookstall in Winnetka a year ago hawking her children's book or something. No way she's qualified. Think of all the Democrats who've earned their stripes, who are in Congress. If you want to have a woman, you could tick off 6. Caroline Kennedy? She was born into the aristocracy. So it's you see my point?
Of course I do. And it's a problem for America.
Yeah.
Congress is
but mostly
filled
for Illinois,
with
but Illinois, from that list I said, the Illinois Democratic Party.
Elizabeth Dole.
Yeah, but you come up with 1 in one state, and you come up with 1 in Tennessee.
Oh,
and you
well, that's
come up
just
with
because we're here.
No, you couldn't find 7 or 8 people in Tennessee.
Actually, I think this whole issue, which I call the royalist issue,
right.
There is a strain in this country where people believe that you inherit your abilities and your talents from your parents, and therefore you should get an advantage in this society, which is a royalist issue.
Didn't we fight the revolution about
exactly
that?
Right. And I've always applied that to the Republican Party.
Well, but I just
because
it's the Democratic Party. It's
most
the
of the
Democratic
royalist
Party.
issues in terms of rights and stratification and entitlement are in fact Republican. So I'm not going to go this way.
Most
and
of
make
it,
it a partisan issue.
What is it? Well,
I will. Let me say.
What
on
is
your
it? What
behalf,
on the Republican Party? Where do you find entitlements? Where do you find that?
That
in Illinois, they can't even buy a seat. Those folks ought to have been lining up to buy that Senate seat because they couldn't buy a seat. So in Illinois, where are the Republicans in entitlements? I don't see that one.
I'm talking about nationally.
Where are they nationally?
Let's take the greatly misnamed death tax. Okay. The tax on inheritance.
Right. Yeah.
Republicans are absolutely obsessive about it because
no, the country's obsessive about it. It's the most popular thing to do is repeal the death tax. You don't see many Democrats talking about it because it turns out people want, even though if they're not rich to pass it on, they'd like to believe if they were rich they could pass it on. Republicans and Democrats.
So it has no financial impact other than.
Well, I'm saying it's hard to call it Republican or Democrat if Democrats wildly support repealing the death tax.
Wildly support?
Yeah, you're going to stand up and tell me you're going to run next time around. What you want to do is install a higher inheritance tax on your constituents in the 66th District? Of course not.
Of course not. It's not a problem now.
But you don't want to repeal it either, is what you're saying.
Right.
I mean, what's the death tax now, right now, for your constituents that they face nationally in the 66th?
I've forgotten now. I know it's beyond what would apply to almost anyone.
$2 million exemption, $5 million or something. So that's enough, is what you're saying. Okay. So let's get past the death tax. What else?
But there are issues related to it.
What else makes the Republican Party
what
makes the Republican Party the party of entitlement, other than the death tax? The belief in repealing the death tax.
The belief that this society should be like the image I have of my ancestors. That the whole conservative impetus, I think, is more royalist than it is rebel, if that's the right term.
Well, take education.
Mm-hmm.
What's your plan for education to improve the quality of education? That was something you said when you ran, make it more accountable.
Right.
What do you want to do?
One is I'd like to raise what's called the foundation level in Illinois so that we have at least a minimal standard for school districts and expenses per pupil.
What do they spend right now in your school districts in the 66? Do you have any idea?
I can't give you numbers on that.
Okay. Across the state of Illinois, the average is $11,000 per kid per year. In the city of Chicago, it's over in the city of Chicago, it's $16,000 per kid per year. It might be even higher in your district.
Right.
You think we're spending enough? I mean, you think the answer is to get more money on education? I mean, is that your answer?
My answer is to make people accountable for what they do.
How about having competition? Would that make them accountable?
With
you're in business. You must believe in competition, right?
What I do believe in, for instance, since I'm in business and I understand these things, is to walk away, as I think the country's going to, from the No Child Left Behind Act. The No Child Left Behind Act caused this institution.
Okay, you want to walk away from it?
Yeah.
Okay, but just give me a stark example. Right now, you could give people choice. You could take the money, whatever it is. Say it's $17,000. Probably is in many areas of the 16th district. $17,000 per kid per year. Say it's $14,000. I don't know what it is. Give them choice. Give them a voucher and say whatever you're spending, you're getting now that's being spent on your kid, federal, state, or local, $14,000. If you're happy in the public school, stay there. If you're not, go to the private school of your choice. School choice, school vouchers. You'd sign up for that?
I would not sign up for that.
No, you don't think people should have choice in your
district? I think it's a responsibility of this government to support public education. It is a fundamental value of America.
More than the kids in the education. So if the education they're getting, like in the city of Chicago, is almost uniformly believed to be pretty bad in many schools, not all schools, and they're spending $16,000, don't say to the kids, the parents, you can take $16,000 and go to the kid to the school of your choice, because we fundamentally have to do something about public education. I thought we had to do something about the kids at the public schools. Let them go where they want. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
I would want to fix the schools. All
right, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll. Obviously, we're going to have to get our guest back, Chief Representative Mark Walker, but thank you so much for coming.
It's really nice meeting you.
Okay, thanks for coming. Let me go right over to Texas, because that was a big issue that you were talking about during the campaign. And you said you wanted to have the biggest middle-class tax cut in history, right? Tell us in the next minute or two, what's that going to be like, the biggest middle-class tax cut?
I don't know the numbers.
Well, how do you do it?
That's
are you going to lower the income tax? Are you going to raise? How do you get if it's a big middle-class tax cut? In Illinois, people pay fairly high income taxes, 3% across the board. You know, right? That could be fairly high depending on where they are.
I'd support cutting that tax. I don't think anyone can afford taxes.
You would cut the income tax, what, from 3% to 2%?
I don't know yet.
Would you raise any taxes?
I don't see any that I would raise. I don't think the economy can stand it. I really don't.
What do you do about government is the issue. Well, right. It says the $4 billion deficit is said right now on the state level. How would you solve it? You're going to go down there, you're going to be a state rep. You're not going to raise any taxes, so how are you going to solve it?
I haven't come up with a solution yet, to tell you the truth. I'll tell you some things I do know. One is that we have to take the pension liabilities of the state and treat them as if they're contingent liabilities. We'll cover them or we won't cover them. It depends what our cash flow is, to fund actuarially what we need to do with long-term bonds. That's the only thing to do, is to put it as a hard liability on your balance sheet and manage your balance sheet.
Well, if you're not going to raise taxes and you're going to fund these pension liabilities, must mean